Welcome to the HR Chat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. Hello, listeners. This is your host today, Bill Banham. And in this episode, we're going to consider how talent acquisition has evolved in the age of AI and some of the biggest related opportunities and challenges ahead of us. My returning, amazing, awesome, wonderful guest today is Serge Boudreau, Vice President, Global Agency Partnerships over at C-Squared Technology, a company on a mission to enable the next evolution of recruitment advertising, moving it closer to the hire and making it fit for the age of AI. Serge has been in the talent acquisition space for the last 20 years, I guess, since he was about 10, as both a practitioner leading large recruitment teams at some of Canada's largest brands, but has also worked on the vendor side with Workopolis, Indeed, and CareerBeacon. He has also co-hosted and produced the very popular recruitment podcast called the Recruitment Flex that went on for almost 400 episodes. Well, congratulations. And 4 years. Wow. And is now a co-host on the HR Morning Show. Serge, my friend, how are you? Welcome back to the show.
Bill, it's a pleasure to be back on the HR Chat. It's one of the first podcasts I ever did. And if I think about, we met right before the pandemic or right after the pandemic. I was trying to remember, but it's always a pleasure. It's so funny because you're in the UK now and I work for a UK company, but I'm still in Canada.
We're talking before we hit record, listeners. I do miss living in Canada. It is the best country in the world. But what are you going to do? You know,
I agree. The UK is pretty close though, right? Like obviously you wouldn't be living there if it wasn't a great country.
Brexit, you know. Anyway, this isn't a politics show. It's an HR show. Let's talk HR and TA. Serge, for those who didn't listen to our last conversation on the HR Chat Pod, why don't you start by taking a minute or two and reintroducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thinking about last time I was on, a lot has changed. But as you mentioned earlier, I've been in the talent acquisition space for around 20 years. And I've lived on both sides, right? Like I've seen the challenges that talent acquisition has from a practitioner, from just tiny details of how you actually get your candidates, how you leverage technology. And I've kind of like flipped from both, like going on the vendor side because of the knowledge that I've learned of being a practitioner, then being on the vendor side and understanding the pain that talent acquisition goes through and trying to help those practitioners, those leaders to fix the challenges that we have seen. And I'll tell you, 20 years in talent acquisition, and I would argue that it's more challenging now than it's ever been, even if we go back 20 years and we've seen all the advent of technology, different process, like job advertising, how that's evolved. So I think there's still a lot of work for me to do because there's still a lot of things that need to be fixed on acquisition.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the HR Chat Podcast. If you enjoy the audio content we produce, you'll love our articles on the HR Gazette. Learn more at hrgazette.com. And now, back to the show.
Is it a harder job to get into now, given that AI is augmenting and replacing so many more junior roles, certainly? But someone who wants to become a TA professional or a recruiter or a sourcer, are those avenues into the role more difficult?
I think it is. And well, it fluctuates. It really fluctuates what the economy is looking like, because I say this a lot. I think recruiters are the canary in the coal mine. When we see a market that there's going to be less hiring, recruiters are the first one to get laid off. And the flip side, when the market starts picking up, we see a lot of recruiters, we see a huge demand for them. And if we looked at the start of 2021, recruiters were the most in-demand role. There was over 300,000 roles open across the world. And now we look at it now where the market is definitely flipped. The economy is a lot more challenging. We're seeing a lot more layoffs. It's really hard to get a recruiter job. And I'm seeing it firsthand in my network. And fortunately, I have a lot of friends that work in recruitment, and there's a lot of friends that are looking for work. So anecdotally, but also if you look at the pure numbers, it's way more challenging. But the question is that going to change? Is that going to change as the market picks up again? Are we going to see that AI has replaced some of these more junior roles? I don't think at the moment, but I think that's coming, to be frank.
So you mentioned a little while ago that when you and I recorded an episode for the HR Chat Show a few years ago now, it was one of the first pods that you'd been involved with. And look at you. Look what's happened since. Become this super famous guy in the space. And that includes almost 400 episodes, 4 years with the Recruitment Flex with Shelley. Can you share a few guests that made a big impact on you and tell us why?
You know what? I'm so glad I did the podcast, and I'm glad I did this podcast as well, because I just started the Recruitment Flex, and it was one of the first times that I was a guest. And I'm sure it's the same for you, you learn a lot from your guests, and it's kind of more educational based as far as interviewing someone. Like where else could you get the opportunity to meet CEOs or VP of HRs that have tons of experience? Just reaching out to them, being like, hey, I'd like to pick your brain. Doesn't always work. So the podcast was brilliant for that. And if I think back, right, there is so many guests that I've learned a lot from it, but some do stand out. One for me was James Ellis. Employment brand was always something I was very curious about, but really didn't understand in the same way of how important it was and how you would actually execute. James Ellis came on and probably 5 times on my show and really gave me some real insights of what it means to be a great recruitment marketer, to understand employment branding. So I would say James Ellis, legend in that space. Then I think of my boss now, Richard Collins. I had him on the show last February on the Recruitment Flex, and I love the concept of qualified applicants. And it's the reason I ended up working with him was because he came on the show and just made me so excited about it. Then there's the usual suspects in our industry. If you think about Hung Lee is someone I follow, and I really take everything that he puts out as almost the Bible as far as when it comes to our space. Tim Sackett was another. So the big names obviously were key, but I also learned from, I'm thinking of the last guest I had. I had the VP of Talent Acquisition for TD Bank, which is a huge bank in Canada and also in the US. And just her approach to talent acquisition was like, okay, that's how really big companies can execute on this. And she didn't have a lot of technology or anything. Like, she was very focused on process and systems. So I learned a lot from her. Her name was Irene Santos. So a mixture across the board, but we probably had 250 guests around that time. So there is so many that I can't even remember or name, but I know, like, if you take all that knowledge combined, it's kind of brought a wealth of knowledge that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Did you ever get Tin Cup on the show, William Tin Cup?
You know what? I never did. I did ask him. I know William, and we never were able to coordinate it. It was going to be on our 500 show, which we never got to. No, I'm kidding, but he's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Legend. The guy's a legend. I once saw him do one of the most entertaining presentations ever, and it's just one slide with a few words on it. I wouldn't even call it a word cloud, actually. But I was riveted, and I was chatting to him last week. He's back on the show, listeners, very soon. I'm recording with him imminently. So there's one for you to get excited about. I am a huge fanboy of William Tin Cup, as regular listeners of the show will know.
This episode of the HR Chat podcast is supported by Nebula Academy, a technology industry-focused workforce accelerator that offers learning programs to prepare individuals for successful careers. Our approach is centered around cognitive neuroscience research, combining the latest research and modern learning methods to create informative and psychologically safe learning experiences. Our programs enable individuals to achieve career readiness and immediate impact in their chosen field. Moreover, we help businesses create positive learning experiences, increase productivity, enhance team performance, and build upskilling resources to meet the needs of today's modern workplace. Learn more at nebulaacademy.com. Thanks, and now back to the HR Chat Show.
Serge, how has the talent acquisition space evolved in the age of AI, and what do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges in the years ahead?
Yeah, well, I think AI has been one of those fundamental shifts that is going to have an impact on talent acquisition. Pretty much every part of the industry and every industry is going to have an impact. And if I look at talent acquisition specifically, I think it's kind of put talent acquisition, like it's flipped talent acquisition on its head, right? I think we've seen some fantastic tools that help streamline the whole flow. Like we're seeing resume screening, sourcing, and even interviewing being leveraged with AI. But I think we're also seeing some challenges. And I think if we look at it net, I think AI at this moment has had a negative effect. And I'll tell you why. I think what we've seen is a lot of talent acquisition build tools, and some of it is not really useful right now. We're seeing things like candidate matching. Is any vendor out there really done a good job with candidate matching? 95% of the ones I've seen, I'm not convinced. I know there's a couple out there that seem to be doing a really good job. But on the flip side, we have seen tools that have created massive challenges in talent acquisition. And I think of one specifically, it's the lazy apply tool, right? Like we all know the easy apply from Indeed, which is basically one-click apply. We've seen it across the board, and we can debate if that's been great for talent acquisition or it's actually caused challenge. But the lazy apply, which is basically an AI tool that you can leverage and apply to potentially thousands of jobs in a day, it's created a lot of noise in the space. And it's created, and this is coming from recruitment departments saying, we have too many unqualified applicants. And that's one reason. I think the other reason is what I call AI assisted apply. So every resume looks exactly the same. You know, you've seen where you're looking at a resume, it's like, damn, they're qualified. Like they're perfect for this role, but you're digging in and be like, so I'll give you an example. I saw a resume for a supply chain manager, and the person hiring this role was showing me the resume she's got. And she showed me a resume. She's like, doesn't this person look qualified? I'm like, first glance, yes, absolutely. Then I start digging in deeper, and they actually stock shelves at Walmart. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. I think every role is important, but also there's a big difference between being a supply chain manager for large organizations and stocking shelves at Walmart. So I think all of this has created so much noise for recruiters going through their ATS and being like, who's qualified? Who's not qualified? Who even knows that they applied for this role? Was this just a lazy apply bot that just applied to as many roles as possible? Which I still think is crazy, Bill, because I think about it. I was doing this exercise in my local market in a city of 1.5 million people. And I was like, how many roles would I actually be qualified if I wanted to apply for a job? And it was 5. So how do you apply to 1,000 jobs? How do you apply to 100 jobs? You must not be qualified for a lot of those roles. But we're really early in AI in our space. And I think that is going to evolve. And I don't think we're going to see the impact of what it's going to come out of it until at least another couple of years, in my opinion.
Listen, if that candidate can convince the boss of a big company that she held that role, I think she's worth an interview. Honestly, that shows creativity to me. Anyway, what do I know? Let's continue through. How does the quality versus quantity debate, Serge, play out in recruitment advertising, and what steps can companies take to prioritize it?
Well, I think that is the conversation in talent acquisition right now outside of AI in general. I think all the changes and the flip in the economy has created a massive challenge for organizations that if you asked me 3 years ago when I was leading talent acquisition for a software development firm that I'd be getting too many software developers applying for my jobs, I'd tell you crazy, right? Like I had to pay double the market rate to even have anyone interested in my position. As now, same folks are telling me how hard it is to get a job and how many jobs they're applying to. And then talent acquisition leaders are telling me I'm getting way too many applicants. And it kind of goes to that exactly where we have asked all our vendors, right? Like job boards, programmatics, it's all been about how much quantity can you give me? And that's been Indeed's whole business model. We can deliver a lot of candidates because we have a lot of eyeballs. But that's no longer the need right now. Like we want to get to a point that we're focused on the quality aspect. Like, can they actually do the job? Do they have the certification to do the job? Do they have the experience? And instead of going through 1,000 applicants, I'd rather go through 20. I'd rather go through 10. I'd rather go through 5, right? Just because we talked about it earlier, recruiters, like recruitment departments have been like ransacked in some ways. There's way less people, there's way more noise, and they don't have the time to go through all those applicants. So unfortunately, a lot of really good candidates are not getting the opportunity because of the overall noise in the space. So what really interested me about working at C Squared and working with Richard, he had the goal of how do we get to a place that we can really dive down, remove a lot of the crap that's out there, right? Like we're seeing a lot of international applicants for roles that, and there's nothing wrong with international applicants, but if you're hiring in Canada, do you want to sponsor someone? Do you have the capacity? Probably not, right? So you're getting a lot of those applicants that are coming in. Then you're getting the lazy apply bots that are coming in as well. So you're getting way too many. How can we verify and remove the unwanted noise, but then verify the license that you need? And that's what we've done at C Squared is we figured that quality is very challenging overall. How do you determine quality? Because you could ask 10 different recruiters and they would tell you something different. We decided to go binary. So do you have this certification or you don't? And we can verify that. Do you have the right to work in Canada? Do you have the right to work in UK or you don't? And we have built the tool that you can do that to hopefully get to a point where the recruiter opens up their ATS and looks at the candidate. They're all qualified with the right qualifications, right? If where you need to determine as a recruiter is like, okay, where is the fit here? Is this a fit to the organization? They have the qualification. Let's dig in deeper if they can actually do the job in our environment where they could potentially be successful somewhere else. So I think quality over quantity is going to be a challenge for a long time. And it's going to start flipping to the quantity side when employers are starting to force their vendors to demand, we'll pay for quality. We're not going to pay for quantity anymore. And that's a huge shift. We've been paying for quantity for 25 years, basically since job advertisement has come in play.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode of the HR Chat podcast is supported by Harrison Assessments. Harrison's award-winning cloud-based technology provides secure, job-specific predictive analytics that enhance the candidate and employee experience. Our assessment science and technology saves you time and money while enabling you to hire the best candidates and target development needs. Learn more at harrisonassessments.com.
With so much focus, Serge, on tech, how do companies ensure that they don't lose the human touch in their recruitment processes?
Yeah, I think this is one that I think a lot about. And then I think about AI in general, and a lot of folks will say that AI has been built to enhance the efficiencies of your employees. And I think there is some truth to that, but I also think there is the reality. I think if you look at the people that are building these tools in general, in sitting somewhere in Silicon Valley, they're not thinking about how we can make our employees more efficient. I think they're thinking, how can we build tools that actually replace employees? Like, I think we have to face that fact, even though it's not a convenient truth. But I think that's where a lot of this technology is going to. And if I'm a CEO of a company, I'm looking at, okay, is technology going to be able to replace a department that costs me a lot eventually? And I think it will. But here is the challenge. We are humans. We're dealing in a world full of other humans, and we like dealing with humans, right? And I think we're seeing this across the board. There's a little bit of pushback with all these automated messages, these AI messages. I don't know if you get a lot of sales or even recruitment inquiries, and it definitely feels that it was written by AI, and it's kind of becoming to a point that it's just noise, spam. We don't even open these emails anymore. We're kind of just oblivious to it. It just doesn't matter. And I think those folks that are going back to the human element and customizing and being very personalized in their approach on the sales or recruitment side are going to be successful. So I think there is going to be a lot of push overall to take technology to the next level to replace some human elements. But I think, like in general, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to hit a point that humans are going to be like, no, I'd rather deal with John than deal with this AI robot that's going to interview me. Or if I know that John is messaging me directly and he's put some thoughts into it compared to an AI automated message or even marketing messages that we see across the board. Like, I can tell on LinkedIn that 90% of the marketing messages are not real. And yeah, it's just not as exciting. It's not as genuine. It's not as authentic. So I think we're going to see a flip. We're going to see technology definitely become even bigger part of what we do across the world of work. But there is going to be pushback, and the humans never going to go away. I think the ones that are a step above when it comes to their interactions, how authentic they are in sales, recruitment, or pretty much any function, are going to have a leg up in a world of technology.
So the good communicators will do okay.
Yeah.
All those middling recruiters or communicators, salespeople, whatever it might be, they might be in trouble. They might be in trouble, Serge.
I think they will. I definitely think like you should leverage AI, right? Like I leverage AI to make my communication better, but I write it out first and I ask AI to help me correct my grammar and all the stuff I'm really bad at. And I think there's always going to be a place for that. But the ones that just completely rely on AI are going to find it challenging to really stand out. They can be replaced by anyone. Like in reality, there's nothing value added. There's no authentic value to that person.
Have you heard these podcasts, by the way, which are entirely AI generated? So you've got a couple of folks having a chat. They're both just generated voices based on a generated script. Man, somebody sent me some examples, and he was like, "This is the best thing ever. The amount of content one could produce." My instant reaction the first time I heard one of these was no, because you buy into the personalities as well. You know, to your point about wanting to people buy from people. You know,
I agree. I would never listen to an AI podcast the same. I think we're going to get to a space in talent acquisition that where bots are interviewing bots. And I don't think anyone wants to get there, right? I think there is a difference of leveraging AI, say in podcasting, and I've leveraged it, like the tool that I use. If I misspoke something and now I'm like, I can actually go in and type in what I wanted to say, and it's been trained on my voice to add that in. But that's like a 10-second clip, right, of my podcast. The rest is real and it makes sense. But like just to create a podcast with two AI voices talking to each other, no way. I would never listen to that.
Okay, two more questions for you, sir, before we wrap up for today. The next one, I'm going to challenge you because I like to mix it up sometimes. In 60 seconds or less, Mr. Boudreau. What innovations in talent acquisition are you most excited about, and why?
Yeah, I think, well, the one I'm the most excited about is verification technology to make actually sure that the folks that they are who they are. And we're seeing so many examples of someone interviewing and a different person shows up to work. We have to fix that. We have to give some type of clarity in the marketplace that who you're interviewing is real. The other one, and I'm not 100% sure how it's going to play out, is skill, right? I think if we look at the next 10 years in talent acquisition, the focus of experience is going to change to skill. And the ones that can upskill themselves as quickly as possible are going to have a huge advantage in the marketplace. And the companies that can determine the skills that are needed to be successful, not only now, but in 2 years from now, and start training their workforce for it, are going to be the winners of talent acquisition and HR in general.
Very good. I think you had 3 seconds to spare. Well done. And just finally, how can we connect with you? What events will you be attending over the next 12 months? By the way, listeners, Serge and I met for the first time in person, right, Serge? Only a few months ago as we record this, September, in fabulous Vegas at HR Tech. And I'm like, Serge, how's it going? And it was boiling. It was like 40 degrees.
I didn't even know you were going, and when I saw you, I was really surprised, and it was fantastic to meet you face to face. So that was really cool, and that's one of the cool things of doing these HR events and these different conferences. You're actually putting a face to people that you've probably dealt virtually for a long time, and it kind of gives you the reason why face to face is never going to disappear, because I feel even a different connection to you. But next year, I've got some big events that I'm going to do. Definitely TA Week in San Diego, the first week of February is the first one I'll be attending. Probably doing Transform in Vegas, Unleash. Rec Fest is my favorite, Bill. I've been once in Nashville. It's the one that I had the most fun, that fit my personality the most. So I definitely recommend everyone should do Rec Fest, and it's going to be in Nashville again. And the one that kind of gets some hate sometimes, but I think is still fantastic because everyone's there and it's where real business is being done, especially when it comes to partnerships, is HR Tech. And I've been at HR Tech for, I think I've done the last 4, and I'll probably do the 5th. So those, I think, are the big events. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm easy to find. So I have a podcast called The Quality Conversation by C Squared. It's available on YouTube and all major podcasts. I am the co-host of the HR Morning Show every Tuesday morning. We have some of the biggest influencers in this space hosting a show. It's a lot of fun. I'm the HR weatherman. I talk about stuff that's maybe controversial in the HR space, but I love it. But if you want to get a hold of me, find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest and fastest way. I'm always on LinkedIn.
One of my favorite cities in the US is Nashville. Absolutely love Nashville. So for that reason, I think I might go to RecFest USA.
Let's do it
next year. And HR Tech, it was my first HR Tech. The HR Chat Show, so they tell me, is top 3 in the world in the category of HR Tech. Awesome. However, I've been avoiding HR Tech conference because I'm not a fan of Vegas, frankly, but I had the best time in September. So I think for sure those two. So Nashville, my friend, we'll eat some barbecue, and Vegas, we'll just try and stay out of the sun.
Yes. We'll eat some barbecue, listen to country music, and then Vegas, you know what? I don't even leave. I don't even go outside. Nothing against Vegas. I'm just there for the conference because I've been way too many times.
Just before we wrap up, I didn't ask you, how can folks learn more about C Squared technology? So do you want to just share the website URL with us?
Yes. So C Squared technology.com all together. There's also our app that's called CV Wallet, and this is where for job seekers they can actually go in and put all their information. They can actually verify their information if they want to, that they can bring to any employer. So cvwallet.com. For those Americans, resumewallet.com works as well. But if you want to see everything that we're doing, C squared technology, all in one word, .com is the place to find me.
Excellent. And as always, listeners, there will be links in the show notes and in the associated article on HR Gazette. That's hrgazette.com. Serge, that just leaves me to say for today, my friend, thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you, Bill.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.